Greetings once again, friends. My name is Peter, and this is Retro Unscripted. Today is a little different. As you can see, I look kind of like a half moon. I have light on one side, and I have dark on the other. And that's because Retro Central is undergoing a little bit of renovation work. I'm going to be getting some extra lamps and stuff this week. But I'm making the best that I possibly can out of it because this is episode 20, the big 2-0. I've done 20 of these now, not to mention the Pete Plays and video logs that I've done. So I wanted to be able to put this together before I went through all of the remodeling process and be able to deliver another episode for those of you who have been waiting for one. It's a little bit unusual going from doing 2 of these a week plus an extra video to doing just one and trying to make it the best I possibly can. So to those of you who have been subscribed to the channel or are new subscribers to the channel, I really appreciate it. To those of you who may be watching Retro Unscripted for the first time, usually I am not this dark. Hopefully the next video will have a little bit better lighting. But again, it is just myself, my laptop, a USB microphone, and my GX TV behind me. So we're going to roll with it and see what happens. So episode 20 is all about game show video games. Now, I will confess, I am a huge game show junkie. A bit less so in my adult years, but when I was growing up, my elementary, junior high, and high school years, if there was a game show on TV, I was going to be watching it. Ranging from The Joker's Wild and Chain Reaction and Super Password to The Price is Right, Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, and yes, even Regis Philbin and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So what I wanted to do with this episode is share with you some of the more prominent game show-based video games from my library. 1 or 2 of these you've seen already before, but the rest you may not know that I have, so I thought it would be fun to kind of talk about them one by one. So first on the list is one that you have seen if you've been watching my channel. This, and I know it's kind of dark, I'm sorry, is Double Dare from Game Tech. Double Dare was developed by Rare, big surprise being an NES game, and is a fairly faithful companion to the actual Nickelodeon game show. In the game, you have to engage in physical challenges, you have to answer trivia questions, and at the very end, if you're good enough, you have a chance to run the Double Dare obstacle course for some awesome virtual prizes. Some of the physical challenges are kind of rudimentary and average, but the trivia questions are spot on. The way that the game feels and the environment is just right. And of course, the Double Dare obstacle course, with the amount of endurance required to win as many prizes as possible, is spot on. If you can find this game out and about and you have an NES, I do recommend it, even though some people diss it. If you're a game show fan, this is one that deserves a spot in your library. Next up is a game I just got this week. It is a brand new pickup, and it's another Rare game, and it's another Game Tech game. Rare being Rare Coin It. This is Hollywood Squares, and again, I'm sorry about the lighting. Hollywood Squares, if you haven't seen it before, is basically tic-tac-toe, but played a little bit differently. In each of the 9 boxes, there is a celebrity. Now, in the NES version, these celebrities are the most generic celebrities you'll ever see. But in later versions of the game, such as the version for Wii, if I'm not mistaken, they actually used Hollywood talent, such as Brad Garrett, to do some of the voiceover work. So the way it works is you pick a square, like you're going to pick a square to put an X or an O in, and then there is a question that accompanies that square. The celebrity is asked the question and then answers the question. The contestant will get the square if they agree or disagree with the celebrity's answer and they're right. For example, are there 30 days in February? The celebrity would say no, and then if you agreed, you'd be right. If you disagreed, then the opponent would get the square and move on. The best part of Hollywood Squares, if you watch the game show, is that some of the humor was very adult in nature. Not necessarily directly adult, but there was a lot of innuendo going on if you watched the show. Between that and Match Game, you learn to grow up pretty quickly if you were a game show fan like I was. The NES version is actually quite good. The celebrity banter is a little bit weak, and the jokes are family friendly to be sure, but it still conveys the feeling of playing in a round of Hollywood Squares, and that's really all you can ask for when you're talking about a game show conversion. So, Rare Coin It is 2 for 2 in game show conversions, and we are going to be seeing a lot of them as we move forward. For example, the Jeopardy games. This is a boxed complete version for the NES. There's also a 25th anniversary edition, and both of those were developed by Rare as well. These are also excellent conversions of the game show. Pick a category, see an answer, pick the right question or type in the right question, win money, and move on. The computer opponents can be pretty challenging, but it is generally best to play if you're in the same room with somebody. One word of caution with Jeopardy, however, is that it's not multiple choice, so you have to be able to type in the question, and you only get a certain amount of time to do that. So if you don't have decent D-pad dexterity and can type the answers in pretty quick, there may be some frustration that goes on, so kind of keep that in mind. My favorite of the series for the NES is the 25th Anniversary Edition, but I am a little bit partial to that because that's one of the first NES games that I actually had. So those are Jeopardy. Now, of course, if you like Jeopardy, you can see those games pretty much anywhere. NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis, Sega CD, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, even for the Xbox 360 and PS3, there are versions of Jeopardy out there. So if you feel like showing off your smarts and you like Jeopardy, then that's the way to go. You can pick your system, pick your game, and go. The next game that I wanted to talk about, and this one, excuse me, has personal significance, but it's probably not the best version of the game. There we go. This is Remote Control, or MTV's Remote Control. This is from High Tech Expressions. Those of you who are a bit younger probably don't remember Remote Control on MTV. It was a game show based on television knowledge for the most part. This was the game show that we started to see actors like Adam Sandler and Colin Quinn for the first time. And Kari Wuhrer, I believe, if memory serves me right. But it's a trivia game by the numbers. You pick a channel, which is basically a category, and then you're asked a question, and you have to give the right answer. The basic feel is the fact that it's all based on pop culture, all based on television. So if you have a lot of that knowledge from the 70s and 80s, which is where a lot of the question base comes from, then you'll do okay with Remote Control. The presentation is it's average at best. It looks kind of like the game show set, but it's not necessarily about environment. It's just about having a decent question and answer session, decent trivia session, and having fun while doing so. Some of the questions are pretty well written, and some of the humor is pretty funny. You don't necessarily have to jump out on a limb to get Remote Control, but it's not a bad ad for your library, especially if you're playing with a friend or family member. Next up, another game that you can find just about anywhere, and that is Wheel of Fortune. And surprise, surprise, this is another game developed by Rare Coin It. Wheel of Fortune, basically hangman with a wheel. You spin the wheel, you land on a dollar value, you guess a letter. If the letter's right, you get the amount of money that you spun. If the letter's wrong, then you lose a turn and it goes on until you can solve the puzzle, of course. Wheel of Fortune has been around for years and years and years. Old-timers like me remember when Wheel of Fortune didn't give out money for prizes, but instead, any money you won, you had to spend in a little virtual shop. And any money that you had left over, like if you had $15 or $20 left over, you got on account. So basically, you got a lot of prizes when you used to play, and you got a little bit of money on the side, but it wasn't a big deal. Of course, now they give away $40, $50, $100,000, even $1 million on a show, so it's completely different now, but the basics are the same. The NES games, Wheel of Fortune and Wheel of Fortune Family Edition, are really well done. Of course, those are Rare Coin It. There's also a version of Wheel of Fortune like the Vanna White Edition, which I do recommend avoiding because it's weak at best. The last NES game that I wanted to cover with you is Win, Lose, or Draw, and this is another high-tech expressions game. So if you didn't like Remote Control, if you thought that the presentation was kind of weak or average or not really appealing, Win, Lose, or Draw is basically the same kind of thing. As a matter of fact, I just played it for the first time yesterday and was disappointed by it because the computer opponent is just dumb and the pictures that are drawn are really easy to identify, especially given the fact that you know how many letters that the puzzle is. So it's a take or leave kind of game. I'm glad I got it, but at the same time, it's not something I really needed to have. And then, of course, last but not least, Regis Philbin and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. This game show has versions for the PlayStation as well as newer versions for the Wii, for the Xbox 360, and the PlayStation 3, I believe. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is a very interesting game format. Now, these games are based on when the show was only on one night a week. When $1 million was the goal, the questions were tougher, the chain was tougher, excuse me, and it was an experience. It wasn't just a game show. It was something that, especially if it was a cliffhanger and a contestant was over $32,000 in that last chain of questions, you wanted to tune in on the next show and see whether that person could be one of the few who actually won the million. The PlayStation, PC, Wii, Xbox 360 versions of the game, because they have voice talent, and because you can see Regis Philbin in the background and kind of calling the game as you go, gives you more of a realistic feeling. Kind of makes you feel like you're there. There's Regis now. Of course, you're not winning real money, so there's no payoff in the end, but still some of the questions are really challenging, and you'll be surprised at how many lifelines you'll have to use, unless, of course, you have Google open on your computer and decide to cheat your way through to win the million, which I hope that you don't do. I won't promise that I haven't done it before, but still, don't do it. Do as I say, not as I do. That's the way you live life. So, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? There are 2 editions for the PlayStation, I should say. This is the 3rd edition behind me. The 2nd edition is this guy right here. There's even, I don't know if you can see it, that little green thing down there. There was a chance to win $1 million. I never took that off the case. So those are the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire games. There are also game show games available for the PS3 that I haven't talked about, such as Press Your Luck, Family Feud, Price is Right, and those games are also pretty close facsimiles or reasonable facsimiles of the game shows they're based on, and that's always cool. Now, of course, with game show games, you're not winning real prizes. That's really where you lose kind of the rush. If you do really well, you go on a hot streak, you know a lot of questions, or there's a particular question at the very end that you happen to know that probably no one else would know, you win the big prize, the excitement's kind of tempered a little bit. But it's all about suspending that disbelief for a little bit and just putting yourself in a virtual contestant's chair. And that's really the coolest thing about game show video games, is the fact that you can play this game anytime you want without being on a set, without necessarily the pressure of winning real money, and just testing your knowledge against what could realistically be you on a game show if you were there. A lot of the questions, a lot of the puzzles are pulled right from the TV shows themselves, and that adds an element of realism to the games that you wouldn't ordinarily expect. So those are game show video games. If you guys have a favorite or favorites, feel free to share them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what some of your experiences with game show video games are. Perhaps there are only a few of you out there who are as enamored with game shows as I am, but so much the better in that case. I'd like to find out what you think about these as well. I hope you enjoyed episode 20, everybody. I know that I'm only doing 1 episode a week at this point. I hope that that's not too few. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop me an email at retrounscripted@gmail.com. You can also catch me on Twitter at retrounscripted, or you can just leave a comment below if you happen to have a Google Plus account, which you should by now, and want to kind of leave me a note here or there. Again, thank you to all of the channel subscribers, to all of you who have watched the videos. We're close to 1,500 views now, and we're closer to 110 subscribers than 100, so that's always a plus. I really do appreciate it. For a guy like me who's just sitting in front of a webcam with with a USB microphone in this case, a poorly lit room. It means a lot that you guys are taking the time to watch, and I can't thank you guys enough. So we'll do episode 21 next week, but that's next week. Until the next time, everybody, thank you very much for watching Retro Unscripted, and I will see you, not Regis, but you, on the next episode of Retro Unscripted. Until then, take care.